So let me introduce to you, going from my left, your right to my left. On the far side, we have Rob Moriarty. And what you should know about Rob is he is our video and tech guy for Sid City Social Club. So all the videos, the editing that you will see in the videos that I'm going to show you, Rob has been responsible for this, and he does it, like, I will message him and I'll go, these are the timings, these are the clips I want in this order. Within a couple of hours he goes, it's done, and it's brilliant. So that's Rob for you. So that's who you should expect. Then we have Melissa Lowery. Now Mel basically kind of oversees Sid City Social Club, and she will explain more about that herself. She's like the mother hen, I guess.
The producer.
The producer!
There's a grown-up word for it.
Yes.
Oh, that's...
or actual boss.
Yeah. Actual boss, yes. Oh, your mic you can pull right into you, so you can, there we go. I'm gonna skip the next person. I'm gonna go to Dr. Mallory Knipe. I had to point out that on the blurb I spelled it doctor, which apparently is a medical doctor, and DR is a master's doctor or a
PhD.
A PhD, sorry. So this is
We'll
doctor.
get there.
So yeah, so if you have a heart attack, do not ask Mallory to help you. She won't be able to help. Also part of Sid City, and we'll be doing a little presentation a bit later on. Myself, Colin Kerrigan, I've sort of explained who I am to you already. And finally, I know as Sid, but you know as both Siddig and Alexander Siddig, Dr. Bashir, Deep Space Nine! Okay, so my first question, which I think you already know, is, very simply, how did Sid City Social Club come about?
Well, I sent you a slide.
You did?
Available.
Let me get that.
So it's late March 2020, and things are happening, things are getting shut down. And Sid emails me and says, hey, I think we should do something. And you guys don't get to see that. There it is. Yeah.
Oh, is this my email?
That's your email to me.
Wow! Awesome. Okay.
Yeah. So, and I happen to have an email in my drafts to him saying basically the same thing, but I was trying to come up with an actual thing that we could do, like some suggestions.
Can you read that? Because I can't read that. That could be my
Yeah, so it says, so you say, I don't know, but I think this thing may go on for a long, long time. And I wonder if you have any plans beyond your day-to-day. Do you think there's an interesting way of reaching out to the Star Trek community to make sure they're all right? With all this social exclusion, it might be time to think about social inclusion. And given a little time and imagination with a box of technical tricks, we can do something fun. And I hope you're all right, but you don't fit the profile for someone who isn't.
I hide it well. So that, of course, was at the very beginning of the pandemic when everything was getting shut down. And I was trying to come up with some ideas of something to do before I actually contacted him, but he contacted me first.
We just
Yeah.
at the same time thought of exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And our emails crossed in the ether, and we both got at the same time. Well, we're all thinking along the same line.
Let's do it. So yeah, we workshopped
Nice
some things.
to meet you.
Oh, one more, sorry.
Well, that segment's over. We're done talking about that. Yeah, so we workshopped some things, and
Yeah, it was hard to figure out what we would do, how we would do this. We didn't know anything about Zoom, and we knew that there were various options. Windows were doing that. They had a platform, and everybody seemed to have a platform where people were getting together. But they were really very, very nascent. They were really early sort of ideas, and Zoom hadn't quite developed. But it was an entertainment. That was really what we wanted to do first. We just wanted to entertain people for a couple of hours. And so all our thinking was geared towards, could we get guest stars on, which has since become a kind of podcast craze. And could we commission someone to write something? And then a whole bunch of us wrote loads of things for the actual event. So we ended up entertaining ourselves, but that's how it started.
And getting to know people, and it really was born out of Sid wanting to make sure that you guys were okay during the pandemic. So that was the.
And I think you wondered as well was, because I wasn't involved at this point, but I think you wondered how many people would come.
Yes, we thought maybe 20 or we started with 28.
No, you said if only 15 or 20 people show up, that's plenty. That's worth doing it for. And I was like, bro. So we had 66 at the first meeting.
Okay.
And then with barely any advertising, because this one didn't want it out there really. So it was just to the Sid City
really important
community.
that didn't become public knowledge and just became word of mouth from friends to friends. Partly because that was a nice and comfortable network, and partly because at the time there was something called Zoom bombing. And there was a lot of pornography being kind of distributed in schools.
Through Zoom bombing.
Zoom bombing.
Welcome to England.
These children would be suddenly, or a church service or something, would suddenly find that they had all this, it's parenting.
So we didn't want that to happen. So we were figuring out all of the security protocols and how we could keep everybody safe.
You did that brilliantly.
Zoom had a lot of tools, and that was, so we went with that platform. I tried to get him on Instagram Live, but that's social media.
I couldn't do that. No Twitter, no Instagram, no WhatsApp, nothing. As long as it couldn't be any of those things, that was okay.
So, and Zoom was the right platform. It created this intimate space, and we were able to have more control over it, and we limited it. It's still only 100 people allowed in a meeting, and we maxed out the next week, and we added another show. We did it twice a week for a year, and tomorrow it will be 2 years.
Wow. And so, from wondering how many people are going to turn up, so the next video clip we're going to show gives you an idea of just 1 minute and how many people turn up and where they are. So here we go.
Nice to meet you too, my friend. Whereabouts in the world are you?
Orlando,
San Diego,
China,
London,
Melbourne, Australia, Croatia,
São Paulo,
I'm in Boston,
from Russia, Czech Republic,
New Zealand,
Belarus,
Virgin Islands, Dublin, Ireland,
Switzerland,
Tunisia, Mexico,
Poland,
Riga, Latvia,
Puerto Rico,
the Netherlands,
Siberia,
Slovakia,
Spain,
South Africa.
and now I live in Dubai.
we live in Bolivia,
Sweden,
Germany,
I live in South France.
Cairo, Egypt,
Nepal.
in India,
I'm in Peru,
I am in Greece,
I'm from Mexico City.
Hanoi, Vietnam.
Bosnia,
In Austria,
New Hampshire,
Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia,
I'm from Argentina.
I am Indonesian,
Singapore.
It's great fun for me because I'm getting to find out all the. We could make a COVID diary. So many people's lives from all around the world. I have to hold it together because everybody's watching.
So that brings me to Mallory and Rob. So Rob, can I ask how you heard about Sid City and how did you get involved?
Twitter stalking, basically. I was for another convention that I was admin of the unofficial Facebook group. I was going around basically trying to find as many different Star Trek actors as I could on Twitter and various other platforms, and very quickly figured out that Sid wasn't on either of those, and then realised that I actually followed Sid City already, and then saw the tweet on April 10th and thought, oh damn, I missed it. And then only realised about half an hour later that I got my time zones completely mixed up, which seems to be fairly universal for most of us at some point. And then I thought I didn't really want to be the guy that would turn up half an hour late. So I went along the following week, pretty much when it maxed out. So I've been going pretty much ever since.
Mallory, same question to you.
Yeah, so I joined Sid City a little bit later. So my dad was a huge Trekkie, and he had passed away in September of 2020. And so when he passed away, I hopped on Netflix and I was rewatching a lot of the Star Trek episodes, as so many of us did during COVID, just out of a sense of nostalgia and missing my dad. And one night I was just Googling what the actors were up to, and that's how I stumbled across Sid City.
That's very cool. And so as a result of that, and people turning up, as you said, we had some special guests. So the next video is a short version of like a précis of some of the people that you managed to get to come along and join in.
This is such a wonderful thing that Siddig does, to think of all of you all over the world and to think where you are right now and what you're doing, and I'm in LA, and this connection, it's amazing and wonderful, and I so appreciate it.
And I enjoy meeting fans.
Yeah, you talk to fans, which I love. I mean, you give time. You spend a lot of time.
They take the time and energy, and they spend the money, and they come and they express their appreciation of your work. What am I going to do? Kind of extraordinary, because it is a symbiotic relationship.
Well, you're talking to the editor-in-chief of the Federation News Service, Julian. I know that when people are trying to keep a secret from me, so I mean, hell, you don't know what I know.
I'm so happy to be back. It gives me so much joy, and it's getting all my cobwebs out. So when COVID's over, I can go try to get a paying job.
If that's the outcome, we're on board.
As anyone who worked with me knows, I was always trying to make Quark more of a three-dimensional character than what most people took him for. So I'm very gratified that this is happening here. He is more than meets the eye.
Really, at the end of the day, story is important, but what people are really looking for is a character that they care about, going through an experience that they're interested in. But the character comes first.
I guess I have always felt, particularly as a woman writer of science fiction, that I've always been speaking from a marginalized place. And so about 10 or 15 years ago, I decided just to stuff my books with women.
Sid, you did represent fairly well, in life. You were not exactly, geek material. You were a good looking kid, and you had a way about you.
And I just talk about how to stay sane and live with dignity as an actor, because they never get taught that. They only get taught the skills.
Earth, the farthest reaches of the galaxy. Buildings made of mud and wood and brick. People living in antiques.
This antique is my home.
Oh.
Tom's beautiful flowing locks. Would you recommend that brush for him?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Send it over, dude.
I will. That's the puppy. Pretty special. Pretty special. You see?
Pretty
Fits
special.
ergonomically in the hand.
Yeah.
Very useful. And gets through hair.
Wow. Special.
So I've already explained that Paul was your old flatmate.
Paul was my old flatmate, and has now become a distinguished actor in his own right. And my brother is just one of the loves of my life.
Very true. Also what was amazing about it was, so how did for people who don't know, we ended up doing fan fiction readings, and in particular, together. How did that happen?
Well, that's a really interesting story, because my wife, Charlotte, who is here, looking horrified. She will not stand up. Had a best friend, Matthew, when she was 2, and he is still her best friend. He just happened to be in its encyclopedic knowledge of all things Star Trek, which is a complete coincidence, and is a writer and English teacher in Nova Scotia, Canada. And I think we were Zooming. He's a wonderful singer, and we would Zoom him into our karaoke nights that Sean and I would have. And Matthew had the only good voice between the three of us, would belt out, Freddie Mercury or something, and Sean and I would be like dogs in the background. And eventually, after a couple of those sessions, I said, "Can you write something? He writes." And he said, yeah, I'll write something. And he wrote a 6-part series for us that I frankly think is as good as any of of the writing I've come across in Star Trek. I mean, that's an exaggeration, but it's absolutely true. Sounds like an exaggeration. And I'm determined to get him before one of the gods who choose these people, at least to audition for Star Trek, but one of these days we'll figure out how to do that. And that's the way it went, and it just happened to be her best friend, who they had like a tough time growing up in Canada together, and they just clung to each other like small fish in a shovel, and they are still best friends, and he won't travel, so he hardly ever comes here, he doesn't like planes and things, and that's basically in a nutshell the story.
And it's really cool because if you want to check it out, you can actually check out the first season. There were 2 seasons. The first season of Alone Together on the Sid City YouTube channel. So you can see Garrick, the attendant, everybody coming back, and
everybody came back so graciously to do this. Rob, Nana, Terry, Farrell, we all came back and did a bit, and they're only, I think, 15-minute episodes, so they're quite digestible. Unlike watching repeats of the whole Sid City, which is 2 hours at a time. So they're really perfect little nuggets.
And he wrote it for Zoom.
That was the challenge. Thank you for reminding me that I said, listen, you have to write this for Zoom, so you cannot ever have 2 characters in the same room. You have to have them always communicating somehow from different places, which is a huge challenge for a writer who's trying to develop character. And he went, you know what, I think I can do that. And he did it pretty good.
He did, I thought it was excellent. It really was. I mean, genuinely, I was a Star Trek geek like this, so when he got his job, I was like, yeah, come on, yeah! It's like,
You got me into Next Generation. This is true. We used to go down to the Blockbuster and pick out videos together. And then go back home and watch them with Paul Daisley, the other man you just saw there.
It's very true, yeah. That was weird. And we always used to say, we said, Sid, you've got the best agent, maybe you should get people in touch with, getting into Star Trek. And then what was weird was there was a moment, I always remember this still to this day, and it was ironic because we had steak last night, and I had steak with Sid. Sid cooked, he's a very good cook, even back then. And you hadn't been working for a bit, I hadn't been working for a bit, which was kind of unusual for both of us. But we were like, what's going on? Where's our careers gone? And I couldn't understand why he wasn't working, and you were very sweet and saying you couldn't understand why I wasn't working, because I just done a soap, and he'd done this thing called A Dangerous Man on Channel 4, which is a big 2-hour thing. And I said to him at the time, I said, if I was a casting director and I saw you in A Dangerous Man, I'd be like, who's that guy? He's brilliant, get him. And he wiped the floor, I will say this, with Ray Fiennes, who was the other guy. Ray Fiennes ended up getting Schindler's List because of it. And then luckily, Rick Berman was watching A Dangerous Man when he got broadcast in America. I was like, Dr. Bashir. Actually, no, it wasn't Dr. Bashir. It was Cisco. They called him in to be Cisco.
How disappointed they were. This 26-year-old squeaky little puppy. Maybe not the captain.
Because you were aged up in A Dangerous Man.
I was playing a 32-year-old.
Yeah, and so they're in front of your face, where they kind of going, well, we've got this other part, but it's for a woman and she's Spanish. Can we change it to make it like maybe Dr. Bashir? Maybe
it was Dr. Soros.
That's right.
Yeah, we became I think Dr. Soros. She became Dr. Bashir.
Yeah, it was very cool. So we all got very excited at that point. And then you disappeared out of my life for like 2 years because you were working all the time. Very interesting. Right, so I'm taking over. I apologise. So what was it like for you getting the Deep Space Nine cast back together again? What was it like working with everybody again in that sense?
It was lovely because we all needed it. We all needed to get back. We all needed to just feel like we were doing something useful, and all we do is act. I'm speaking for myself actually. Nina and Terry and Armin, they all have brilliant other. Armin's a fantastic writer, and Nina does all sorts of different entrepreneurial things, podcasts and whatnot. And Terry too. But I needed to, grease the wheels, keep things moving. And Andy was my first port of call because Andy always says yes, which is fantastic. He throws a few expletives in there, but he says, if any of you have seen him on Sid City, well, it's not the cleanest language, but it's heartfelt. And you know where he stands on pretty much everything after 2 minutes talking to Andy Robinson. And really happy to do it. And they were really happy to do this sort of writing because they're very fierce about their character. And they don't like any sloppy writing, you know. They probably would have had it up. But I sent Annie the script, and then Annie did all the proselytizing for me and convinced Armin and I had to, and then now obviously was going to do it. And Terry, fantastic. We were very lucky. Everyone we asked said, yeah, sure. Yeah, let's go.
And what was it like working with Django for the first time? Your son?
It was great. It was, you know, I kind of wanted him not to be in it. But I cave, like every parent eventually caves when their son goes, I'm serious. He's since decided, which is hilarious because I was fully behind him. But that's great too. I think he wants to get into music, composing. Wow. So it was lovely. He's such a talented, you know, beautiful young man. Yeah. And I was just really happy to he's just great. Since I've done a podcast with him, because his mom, I don't know if you've heard of a podcast on whatever the podcast channel is.
Spotify, you can get it on Spotify. Sunday night dinner with Nana and Django.
Yeah, and they talk about all sorts of intimate things. I just did, I were there, and they talked to me, and we talked about, you know, quite real stuff about what it's like when dad leaves a family and what happens to the child who's like, in this case, Django. So it's all very frank and really quite interesting. The sort of thing I prefer listening to, so I'm very happy to talk about it.
Very much so. So moving on slightly. So those were the special guests that came. And then what was interesting was when just people from, so what happened was, the format was that people would tune in and sign up and then get to talk to Sid for like 15 minutes for free, just to chat. And what we very...
It was an emotional talk.
Yeah, it was. And it was a case of not them. Normally at these sort of things, people say, you know, this episode, this happened, what was it like? But what it became very quickly was you interviewing people. So this next clip is to give you an idea of the kind of genuinely interesting people that came along to Sid City, and that's still part of the club. So here's the next video.
This project is 243 pages of food, art, family stories.
Oh my goodness.
It's really a record of what we eat and what we have done and where we were during lockdown.
We collaborated on that costume. So Crow did all of the fabric.
The fall front trousers are particularly fun.
I have 4 drawings here. And interesting thing about the first 3 is that I did them while listening to Sid City.
I make leather masks. So this is one of the guys this is kind of my signature piece.
Wow.
This one, it used to be green. I've been wearing it for a few years at shows.
It's not finished, but it's a picture of my papa's boat.
This was a Star Trek utility belt. So actually, this was the Batman utility belt, but they repurposed it into Star Trek.
Most bees have a 1-year life cycle. Most of that time is spent as a larva, not as an adult that's on flowers or anything. Most of them only are out collecting nectar and pollen for a couple of weeks to a couple of months. Wow. Then they overwinter as like, you know, a larva or something.
So one thing that people will commonly get wrong when they see what I wear when I do my job, they'll say, oh, Sean, you're covered from head to toe. You must be incredibly safe in there. And fun fact, I am not. Well, not because of what I'm wearing. I'm very safe all the time. My wife is watching this. Everything's always safe.
We're going to push and break. It breaks the clasp. So I'll show you what I mean. So hands above your head.
There's a tip for life. So what sort of memories do you have of people coming along? And I'll throw that to Mel first.
What sort of memories do I have
of people coming along and sharing their stories, the things that you found most interesting?
Just the diversity of talent and skill and jobs and people who are willing to share what they do and what they're excited about. There was so many times people came on and they were saying, oh, you know, I'm not that interesting. And then Sid would ask them, you know, well, what do you do? I'm a shark biologist. Yeah, that sounds dull. But just over and over, people would come on and start talking about themselves, and it just turned out they were the most interesting person that we've met so far.
There wasn't an uninteresting person ever. And even people who had no job, you know, they had some family that they hadn't seen for a year and a half. They had no friends that saw them regularly, but behind them was a thing they'd been knitting for 2 months that was beautiful. And they were expert at it. Or there was a drawing they'd been working on, or 16 drawings that they'd been working on. So everybody, if you just scratch the surface a little bit, had something fabulous.
We just had this week at the Tuesday show, we had somebody, we were talking about the Roman frieze on her wall.
Oh yeah.
And then she's like, yeah, when I was a sailor, and just moved on. And he's like, what? She was a captain of a tall ship.
Old school galleon. She started as, you know, a deckhand and went all the way up to a first mate or something. And she was, so everybody had has something astonishing to say, even though they don't realize it, which is kind of humanity in a nutshell.
Do you have any other sort of favourite things that happened? My quiz.
Your quiz is fantastic. I just love meeting people. I'm not a very sociable person, but I found that I really like, I've always loved people. I just don't really like being around them. But I've decided, really, I'm a bit surprised by myself. And you know, meeting Rob for the first time was astonishing. There's a man who gets, you know, on camera is like, hi, and sees clearly in a wheelchair, and he has assistance, and he needs help with all sorts of things except talking.
I do quite well with that.
And then he tells us the story of how, candidly tells us the story of how he became disabled. And it was so moving. And people would share, sorry Robert, that's embarrassing, but you're going to probably tell it.
It's all right, I'll embarrass you in a few minutes.
And then people would, because of COVID and because of the loneliness and because of everything, would talk about some of the most intimate things that they wouldn't tell anybody, but they told 200 people, 100 people. And they would ask to be edited out because we have, you know, an edit app, you can be out of the thing. Or they would say they work for some government agency and then say they should, can we please keep this out of the recording? Or they're from a country which is war-torn, or where it's dangerous to even mention the name of their president. And that was at a time, you know, that was incredibly dangerous. They would be edited out. But they felt eventually people crept out and felt comfortable talking about, I went pretty deep in the early days. You know, I would ask people about some fairly intimate things about themselves. And they were always really willing to talk about it. Some people said no, and that was totally unoffensive to us. We're like, cool, moving on. What do you want to talk about? So it was an exercise, it's a chat show. It's a chat show for everybody, where everybody's a star.
And Rob, what's your favourite memory of Sid City Social Club?
I mean, I've got a selfish one, obviously, with the quizzes with the music challenge. But given that I know what video is about to come up, I mean, I probably have to go with Sid's birthday. Because that one day, I mean, that was also the first video that Mel asked me to edit, which I thought was pretty a bit of an honour to actually get to edit that one. Kind of showing the amount of trust she was willing to kind of put me pretty much straight away. But I think if we'd probably found one more guest for that week, Sid would have had a stroke.
Quite already out of my skin.
Yeah, you will see that in a minute. And Mallory, what's really interesting was, what was it that drew you to end up doing what you did?
That's big. Very big, Colin.
So basically, Mallory came along and wanted to do an academic study on Sid City Social Club, and you backed it out. Over to you.
Yeah, so one of the first times that I attended Sid City, Mel and Sid's friend Gail Stever was on, and she's a psychology professor in New York. Which, by the way, I'm a doctor of social work. that's what you were looking for, and a college professor. I got to go to a master's degree. So Gail was talking about her fandom research that she's done for the past several decades, and I kept waiting for her to say, and this is the study that I'm doing about Sid City, and she never did. And so she and I connected on LinkedIn, and I just asked her, I said, so what are you doing for Sid City? And she said, well, I'm currently on sabbatical, I'm writing a textbook, I don't really have time. She's like, but you should, because she knew that I was a social science researcher, and I just finished my doctorate research and was looking for something new, and so she encouraged me to reach out to Mel. And so I did, and Mel said, we've actually been hoping that someone would take advantage of this incredible data that we have, all these documented meetings, all of this stuff. And so, so I went through the process and got approved to do this study. Or you wanted me to talk about it? Absolutely. So I did a phenomenological study, which means that I took a look at the essence of people's experiences in a virtual committee during a historical pandemic. And so I had 25 people from Sid City that I selected from 7 different countries, because as you saw earlier, Sid City spans all across the world. And I asked them about their experience, and the 2 main things that came out of that was, number one, people just talked about the incredible emotional and social support that they got from Sid City, especially during that period of isolation and quarantine, because my study predated the vaccine. So I did it pretty early on, and so there were a lot of quarantine measures still in place. Half of my study participants lived by themselves, and even ones that didn't, a lot of them had physical disabilities that made them much more susceptible and vulnerable to COVID, so they were very isolated. Some had mental health disabilities, anxiety disorder that was just compounded by COVID and leaving them much more isolated than normal. And so, so they talked about the social and emotional support that they received from Sid City that they didn't have right now because they were so isolated. Some people were moving. I myself moved to a different community during COVID where I couldn't build a physical community, and that was many people's experiences, or they were starting a different job, or getting furloughed from their job, or in a lot of situations where they just lost their typical community. And so I have a couple of quotes from participants. One of them said, "It's weird to think of 2020 as being the most social year I've ever had." And another person said, "When I finally found this community that were interested in talking to each other, sharing with each other, learning from each other, it kind of got me out of the slump. It cheered me up. I don't know how, but it cheered me up hearing other people talk about their experiences and realizing I'm not the only one that's trapped." And then people also talked about how it really provided stability, because COVID was a time when people were like, what month is it? What year is it? What is happening? Not knowing when they were going back to work, when their kids were going back to school, and everything was just kind of in chaos and uncertain. And people talked about, I had this thing that I knew was going to happen on a weekly basis. I knew that there were people that were going to be there for me on a weekly basis, and that meant so much to people. One person said it was like a honing point. Even if everything else was hitting the fan, there were those 2 things, Sid City and the quizzes, that I knew would happen each week that I could look forward to, and that meant so much to people. And then the other main thing that people talked to was just the incredibly unique community that Sid City came to be. So everyone talked about the people. So Mel talked about how it's just such an incredibly diverse community, and there are so many different intersections of identities and interests. One person said, "I've met more people doing this than I've met in the past 20 years. People that I want to be in touch with afterwards." So it's meant the universe to me. It's literally opened up the universe to me. And then people talked about the incredibly unique environment of Sid City, the family feel of it, how egalitarian it was. It wasn't this hierarchy of Sid up here and everyone else down here. It really was such a connected community. One person said, "This is the first time where I've literally felt like part of the group, and it's been completely natural and comfortable for me." Another person said, "I work in a career that's not conducive to being the entirety of myself at this life. So with the social club, I could be in my profession and also bi and also fluid, and all of these different things that I have to not actively suppress, but certainly downplay in my daily life, my professional life." And finally, one other person said, "That's another reason why I think I come back. It's just so good for my psyche, let alone my heart and soul. It's good for my psyche just to go. I think that's one of the ways that it's saving my life. And then the other way is also, it's just good for the heart and soul, and that will save your life too." People also mentioned Colin's pub quizzes that he did online for us, that he did for like a year, every Saturday and Sunday, just to give us something to do, to entertain us during COVID. And the unique thing was that after the quizzes were done, he would just leave the Zoom room open for people to socialize and chat. And I think there were times where it went for literally 24 hours from a Saturday quiz until the Sunday quiz was time to start. Colin's like, you guys gotta get off, I need to start today's quiz. Because when one time zone was going to bed, another time zone was getting up, they would just pick it right back up. And that allowed another element of connection, because whereas, you know, the Tuesday, Friday meetings, most people were observers, so they would watch Sid interacting with someone, learning more about their life, and most people were just kind of watching. The post-quiz chats kind of added an extra element where people could get to know each other and really chat and connect and get to know the people behind the screen a little bit more. So one person said the post-quiz chat was like a breath of fresh air, because it was that social interaction that so many of us haven't really had for such a long time. And plus, we were really getting to know and meeting new friends in a way that we couldn't do in the Discord or in the main Zoom meetings. And then finally, the last piece of kind of the uniqueness of this situation. Ironically, people said one of two things. They said either Sid made it unique, or the fact that it wasn't all about Sid made it unique. So on the one hand, I mean, people said no one else is doing this. Sid is taking 4 hours every single week to dedicate to his fans, to interact, to get to know people, and people just aren't doing that. And so they just talked about how incredibly unique that was and how grateful they were. But they also talked about how, but it quickly became not all about Sid. And one person actually said, it's not like the all-hail Sid brigade here. You know, Sid brought us together. He and Mel created this incredibly unique, incredible thing, and now we have each other. And it's no longer all about Sid or Mel or Colin. You know, it's about this thing, this incredible thing that we've all created together and become a part of together. So
I think that's the most important thing. I think everyone eventually, after very little time, I mean 6 or 7 weeks, realized there was a way in which they could contribute to help each other. And they did. They didn't hesitate. They didn't need convincing. No one needed asking. There was a sort of hug-a-thon around whoever needed a hug. And I would be chatting away to someone, fascinating. But they would, in the meanwhile, very quietly, somewhere else, be making sure that another person felt okay, who had never talked to me or had never shown their face. I mean, one of the things that's really important about Sid City is that you can just be there with a blank screen and do something else and have it on in the background. We call these guys lurkers. And they're just so welcome, because it's not about being there and looking beautiful and being fabulous, you know. It was about just being present and listening. And occasionally, even the lurkers found someone they could help. And there's a bunch of different satellite things that just went on, little sub-communities that looked after each other, which really coexisted with the quizzes that Colin was doing. Mel would always kind of have a bunch of links that people would provide for various other things. Because I was really worried in the early days about possible suicides and being unqualified to cope with that sort of thing. So we were trying very hard to come up with links of organizations that people could go to help them, that was not us, but foundational institutions. And it turned out that the people we knew that were around us were just as helpful as the foundational ones. Apart from the fact that we had eminently qualified professionals amongst us who could help with this stuff, ranging across the social spectrum. So it turned out just to be a self-generating, self-perpetuating group of people who looked after each other, just with Sid in the name for some horrible reason.
And if you would like to read more about what we've been talking about and about the academic study, it's currently in its second draft with the Journal of Fandom Studies. So hopefully in the next few months you'll be able to read it.
So in a really weird way, Dr. Bashir is still alive. It was when it was Sid's birthday. And this video, I just love this. I absolutely love
Let
this.
me set it up a little bit.
Okay.
This is a surprise party.
Oh, it says on the thing.
Okay, he didn't know we were doing any of this. I had told him we would do a birthday shout out, because that's a tradition that we do in the social club. If you got a birthday, you can sign up and we'll give you a birthday shout out. You get happy birthday from all over the world. And I said, we'll just do a quick birthday shout out, and then we'll get on to the regular show. And then I told everyone else, there's no sign up for this week. We're having a surprise party.
And this was the result.
We have a restaurant in Western Massachusetts. And
oh my goodness! This is your restaurant. Oh, you have my. Oh my goodness! What a! It's just a fun. I've got to tell people what's just happened to me. There is a cookbook, kimchi and curry, and it's my favorite cookbook, and it was given to me, and it was signed by you guys, and you're the real people. You're the people who own this wonderful restaurant. Again, slightly amazed that you're here. You're talking to me. This is amazing. I've been watching all your YouTube videos, and I've been telling everybody about them. And I'm still kind of digesting the fact that you're here.
Well, I am here to celebrate with you and
it's crazy. What's going on?
Talk about all the wonderful ways to spread love in this world.
Harry.
And, while we're talking, there's nothing like doing a little talking and a little cooking, and see if we can answer any of your questions.
My real name is actually Richard Garriott. I changed my name on screen to Lord British because that was my nom de plume for basically the last 45 years. I'm one of the very first ever developers of computer games creators.
You are in the pantheon of computer gods. Your game, Ultima Online, is my favorite game of all time. Also, Sid and I played Ultima Online together for 7 years. We didn't realise that Robert Hewitt Wolf, one of the producers and writers of Deep Space Nine, was also playing the game at the same time. We didn't know that.
And I was so terrible at that game. We would spend 45 minutes trying to get on a boat. And missing, falling in the water. Missing, and we would just laugh our heads off. Yeah, it was. It's still to this day one of my favourite moments. Literally just crying with laughter. And in those days we couldn't there was no headset talking, it was all text time. And just me going, I'm crying here.
Do you remember that you told Richard that story? Do you remember that you told him about trying to get on the boat?
Yes.
I didn't know how much is actually still in there.
Oh, that was one of my favourite moments of playing. It was just a dismal failure. Do something so ordinary as get a computer character.
And I have a question for you. So, would you say, in the last few weeks, has Ultima Online been slightly usurped, maybe?
No. It's a first love thing.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Never going to go away. I've found lovely games since then. I'm playing a game called Elden Ring, which is quite popular.
Oh, yeah.
And I've just got into that, level 140 or something. And a few of us are playing it. I think Jen's here somewhere, you're playing it too. And it's awesome, but it's not going to replace Ultima Online, which is scrolling the screen, view from above, characters with swords that go. That is where it all began. Yeah. I was accused of taking cocaine when we were doing Star Trek. They called me into the office of the producer, and it's very rare, and they sat me down because I had bright red eyes. And they said, "Are you okay? Because we can help. We have people." And I was like, what do you mean? And they said, you're not looking great. And if you're taking, whatever you're taking, we can do something about it. We can figure, you have to tell us that. And I said, stop playing computer games. Coming to work at 7 a.m., 2 hours sleep, and my mind's sort of.
So my final question to Sid and Mel is, actually there's one thing. Rob, I want you to tell us what Sid City has meant to you.
Oh God, here we go. Yeah, so those first few weeks I was kind of really listening into the clubs. I was kind of very much kind of, as most people do, kind of finding their feet, kind of getting to judge, who they liked in the group, maybe who they didn't like in the group, who they really wanted to connect with. And I think throughout that time I was kind of really interested in kind of seeing, it was the Sid kind of do the reverse interviews of us. And I thought that was fascinating because I was getting to know people and kind of really kind of judging how much information I was kind of willing to give. Eventually when I would have a chat with Sid. And so I think we first spoke May 2020, so about a month in. But I still pretty much treated that like one of my almost like stump speeches for a politician. Because I've told my story countless times, I'm not ashamed to say, with all of the work that I've done, and I just kind of rattled off my usual kind of 15-20 minute speech. And didn't really think anything of it, even with your reaction immediately afterwards. But it was then over the kind of the subsequent months that you were then chatting with other people and kind of seeing reactions from them, and then some of your kind of regular themes that kept on coming up, like, what is love, disability, racism, all of those sorts of things. And people were talking about all of the issues that they were trying to work through. And I thought, well, what is my issue, if I've got one at all? And then suddenly thought, whoa, don't touch that thread. But then as I kind of thought about it more over the intervening months and kind of got to know people in the group, I was really kind of boiling down to one about trust. And it wasn't necessarily just a trust in other people, it was actually a trust in myself. So I think when other people have kind of reacted to my story, and they said, look, it was amazing, all the kind of stuff that I did, I kind of batted it off, really. I didn't really think about it, even when you reacted to it as well. I just didn't react to it at all. But then as I got to know other people in the club, and in particular Ellie, who's on one of the videos at the end, they kind of identified this thing in me, which is almost like two different versions of myself. The kind of the more sarcastic, outgoing one who likes making people laugh, but then the slightly more serious one, who is kind of screaming inside, kind of going, take me seriously, please. And I could never quite marry those two together in a way that they would kind of be at peace with each other. And then I chatted with you about 4 months later, and it was for a birthday shout-out, which was a little tradition that Sid started, and it's still going even now, where if it was your birthday, you could sign up and you could get a shout-out from people, 100 people all over the world, and I thought, I'll go for one of those for my birthday. He might just remember me, possibly. I needed to remember my name, but then someone else who was having a birthday shout-out that same day for their birthday, he literally rattled off my story with perfect clarity, which for Sid's memory was quite shocking.
My memory is pretty shocking.
But I thought for Sid to kind of, even remember, my name or part of my story, that literally just kind of, set my brain splattered all over my back wall somewhere. And as I kind of, thought about that, and then chatted with other people and all of those sorts of things, I slowly started to kind of not only trust in my own story, but what other people thought of it, that kind of, the validation that you gave it, and everyone else in the group was giving it, was not only rubbing off on me, it was rubbing off on everyone else when they were telling their story as well. And so that it kind of became that, I think as you said, perpetual kind of self-validation. That people then do start believing in themselves, and they can make positive impacts, as we were all talking about last night, kind of changing their lives in a positive way, and that kind of really rubbed off on me, even though I was already doing quite a lot of stuff anyway. So now I think finally for the first time in about 40 years, I'm actually at a point where I actually like who I am, accept it, and when other people I was trying to say that you as well, so I didn't want to set anyone off, but you were responsible for it, both of you. So, yeah.
So we're unfortunately running out of time, so my next question was going to be, where does Sid City go from here? But what I will say is, come along, Sid City Social Club is still going, and you will find out what the future holds. And I would just like to say thank you so much to everybody on this panel. I find you every time gets me every time. It gets me really emotional. It's really weird. So thank you, and thank you, Sid, for doing this. Thank you, Mel. Thank you, Mallory. Thank you, Rob, and everybody else can say
Thank you. Thank you.
We're just going to play you out with a little video of the history of Sid City.
Just so you guys know, you're all experimental guinea pigs. And you're going to teach me how to do this.
First, we kind of had to decide what's our mission, what's the purpose of what we're going to do. And we ended up with this kind of talk radio style show that happens on Zoom twice a week.
And it was a real privilege to get to know people and their story. And they always start out by saying, my story is really boring compared to the last person.
Then they're amazing, and they've got something, and they're fascinating, wherever they work, whatever they do.
And I enjoy meeting fans.
Yeah, you talk to fans, which I love. I mean, you give time, you spend a lot of time.
This is such a wonderful thing that Siddig does, to think of all of you all over the world and to think where you are right now and what you're doing, and I'm in LA. This connection, it's amazing and wonderful. And
I was always trying to make Quark more of a three-dimensional character than what most people took him for.
Alone Together, a DS9 companion.
I know that when people are trying to keep a secret from me, so, I mean, hell, you don't know what I know.
You'd be surprised, and watch your language.
I'm so happy to be back. It gives me so much joy, and it's getting all my cobwebs out, so when COVID's over, I can go try to get a paying job.
If that's the outcome, we're on board.
Message, what must I give to have a decent, uninterrupted conversation with my husband?
Together. We have a restaurant in Western Massachusetts. And
oh my goodness! This is your restaurant! There is a cookbook, and it's my favorite cookbook, and it was given to me, and it was signed by you guys.
I understand you have a little bit of history with the Ultima series and Lord British.
Oh, wow. I'm just getting inundated with some of my heroes. Colin and I spent 2 hours laughing hysterically because we couldn't board a boat in Ultima Online. We just couldn't figure it out. We kept jumping into the water.
Sid and I were playing at the same time when we were both on Deep Space Nine, but we didn't know each other was playing.
This project is 243 pages of food, art, family stories.
Oh my goodness.
Brilliant! That's really wonderful.
Say, I'm by no means an expert chef, and I've got some PAs that can burn water given half a chance. We did try the miso chicken a couple of weeks ago, and either it didn't work or the PA didn't work. I'm not sure which.
Whatever the word is. Levitating teapot.
And this is a traditional Halloween prank.
Irena, listen to me now. Listen to me. Listen to Uncle Andy. You're just going to go there. I mean this. I mean this from my heart. You're going to go there and you're going to play.
How is life?
My brain has died.
It's okay. I will
It's
lead you through this. And you couldn't not be in more generous arms than the arms of all these people.
This which secretive organisation recruited Dr. Bashir against his will to work for them.
I want to know if Sid remembers.
Yeah, Sid, what was it?
Section 31.
Your first song this week, Rob, your 3-second intro is this.
Climb of faith. Only love can hurt like this.
Oh my God!
I have 9 hours in Heathrow.
Realised that I forgot to pack a hairbrush. Problem solved.
Fast and gentle styling. That idea really appealed to me.
One of the biggest things was all the participants talked about how it was really a big source of psychological support. It's meant the universe to me. It's literally opened up the universe for me.
Is there anything in your mind that you can talk about that touched you about this period? Is there anything that you went, you know what, the world is a little bit better?
People that
I wouldn't have met without this.
The whole Zoom thing, yeah.
The whole, I mean, Zoom, but also the club and everything like that. There's people I would have never met, and then I somehow like met them through this, and we're just vibing on the same level. And you're just like, the fact that we all clicked as well as we did.